Top lane is one of the least popular role in the game, so it's only natural that it is the role where most people get autofilled. If you're not a top laner, you probably have gotten autofilled top at least once in your ranked games. In this situation, you probably thought of playing Malphite, and you were right. He is, in my opinion, the best champion for autofilled players, as he is both very simple and always useful. He can even get some solo kills. However, there are three major mistakes that players often make that you want to avoid. The first one is choosing the wrong rune. Even though Malphite is a tank, you should not default to Grasp of the Undying. Arcane Comet is by far the easiest to play of the two, so I recommend that you take it by default if you're unsure of what to play. You should always take it against ranged champions, and since you are autofilled, I also recommend it against bruisers, to keep the lane very simple to play. Grasp of the Undying should only be taken against tanks, because Comet is usually pretty ineffective against them. The second mistake that players make is thinking they are tanky in the early game. You are extremely squishy in the early game, which is also the case for most tanks. Getting lane priority in the first few levels is almost impossible on Malphite, and you should let the enemy push into you most of the time. Even if you're playing Comet, you can start with E to get the first 3 melee minions quickly if the matchup is difficult. You absolutely need some components before trying anything risky. The third mistake that players make is wasting their mana in lane. Comet Malphite always uses Doran Ring, however, if you're not paying attention, you can still completely empty your mana bar with only 5 of your Qs. Your Q's mana cost is extremely high, especially because you're maxing it, and Malphite doesn't have that much mana. That happens when you don't wait for mana flow band to come off cooldown before using another Q. Its cooldown is 15 seconds, while your Q's base cooldown is 8 seconds. Moreover, since Arcane Comet's cooldown is roughly the same as mana flow bands, you should always wait for both of them to come back off cooldown before pressing Q. Also, using Q to last hit is only worth it if it's for a cannon minion. That was for when you're playing with Comet. If you're playing with Grasp, you do not max Q. I even recommend using it only when necessary, and avoiding using it for short trades. Now you're set up for your next autofill game.